is gift giving in the most lavish sense of the word. There is nothing to compare to it. There is nothing, no point of reference that you or I have that could compare with that gift. You might say, well, Brother Hugh, what if my sister needs a kidney and I offer her one of mine and I die on the table and she lives? I gave my life for her. Yes, indeed. What a beautiful thing. How precious. How magnanimous and unselfish. How selfless. But brothers and sisters, that's as far as that gift can go. Is to give her more breath in this flesh. It can accomplish anything for her in eternity. Not one thing. And so even that fails and falls short of true comparison to the fact that Jesus Christ died for you and me. What does this gift involve? Whenever the wise men came and they showered their gifts upon the Christ child, first of all, I would assume that it can be fairly correctly stated, and this is supposition on my part, but I doubt it's all they had. I doubt seriously if when they went back to the Orient or wherever they were from, if whenever they returned home, when they made that arduous journey back home, I doubt seriously if they were homeless. I doubt seriously if they had exhausted everything for the sake of presenting those gifts to the child. Brothers and sisters, the scriptures tell us that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. You know what that means? There's not another one waiting in the wings.
That's right.
There's not another that God will lavish his love upon. Whenever he gave his only Son, he gave his only Son.
Only one.
And brothers and sisters, that's pretty well giving it all, isn't it? Look at what the Son gave.
His life.
He emptied himself of his glory. He emptied himself of who he was accustomed to being in eternity past. That does not mean that he ceased to be God. Do not take that away from what I've just said.
His humanity was surrendered.
But no, his humanity was taken upon at Bethlehem.
Oh.
He took humanity upon himself.
Yes.
What the word incarnation literally means. To become human.
Okay.
That's what the word incarnation means. And brothers and sisters, when you consider the fact that Jesus Christ is the agent of all creation.
That was discussion on
God's purpose creation, Jesus Christ created. And when you consider that the very one who flung the stars into existence, that same star that led those wise men to that home in Bethlehem, was created by the babe of Bethlehem. You ever thought about that?
Yes.
That very womb that held him for 9 months, he created.
That's right.
He created the space that would confine him. Can you imagine? Going from the heavens being your throne to being confined in a womb.
Big change.
That's tremendous to think about. And then to consider that in coming in that fashion, he subjected himself to the humiliation of taking upon himself flesh, but also the humiliation of his circumstances. The angels adored him in glory. And they praised him. He had the constant companionship of his heavenly Father. And he comes, and in taking on flesh, he knew hunger. Not only in the desert wilderness when he was tempted by Christ, babies get hungry, don't they?
When he was tempted by Christ?
Excuse me, by Satan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, buddy. Babies get hungry. If you don't believe that, I think my little nephew kind of let him know this morning that he was a little on the hunger side when he was here. Not only that, babies stumble and they fall and they cut themselves and they have ups and downs and they have things to learn. Jesus Christ had things to learn. Have you ever considered that? The process of training him up? Have you ever considered the enormity of the blessing and yet the challenge that was Mary and Joseph's in raising the Son of God? You know, we all have to answer for the way we raise our children. You realize that, right? But particularly when you're raising the Son of God, you want to make sure you step rightly. Not only that, I'm certain they failed in some respects. After all, Sister Ann, as wonderful as I know you are, you do everything right when you were raising your children. That's the only correct answer any parent can give. You know why? Because you got the flesh like I've got and like Mary and Joseph had. I would imagine you did nearly everything perfectly. But the fact of the matter is, Mary and Joseph, they lost him one time.
Mm-hmm.
They misplaced him.
Mm-hmm.
And brothers and sisters, to contemplate that through his life, this man learned to trade from Joseph, his adopted father, the man who cared for him. Joseph was a carpenter.
Yep.
Brother Durwood knows what a hammer will do to you.
Mm-hmm.
Lately.
We call him the shark.
I don't know that Jesus ever left one on a ladder and had it fall on his head. But I can remember as a child, my mama's daddy, my granddaddy, the only granddaddy I ever knew. He was enough for 3 or 4. Whenever we were growing up, he'd take us out back. And Granddaddy would take a board about this long, a 1x4. And I can honestly say he taught me how to drive a nail. Didn't do a real good job of it, but he taught me. And he would take like 12 penny nails, and they'd be in a row on that board, and he'd get them started just so that you had to hold it for a tap or 2. But enough that the nail would stand up. And he'd set it down on the grass. And I'd get on my knees with that hammer in my hand. And I had to hold that nail, because he sure wasn't going to hold it for me.
Mm-hmm.
His mama raised no dummies. And I'd hold that nail, and invariably, Brother Durwood,
Yep.
it hurts just as bad when it's your thumb.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus Christ, I know they didn't have hammers like we know hammers, but they had instruments, tools.
Mm-hmm. Mallets, I
And
think
he
they had.
subjected himself to the rigors of a trade. Then, brothers and sisters, to consider that in all of that, when he entered his earthly ministry, he spent those years having nowhere to call home. He'd go to Capernaum and Nazareth, Jerusalem. But there wasn't like he had an apartment waiting for him in any of those places.
Mm-mm.
brothers and sisters, to consider then that the Creator of